Oh, at the back.
It's you. It says it's alive.
I was there.
Check when you like. Oh, this one's kind
What does the big button do? Oh, that's for the.
That's for to let remote people come in and join the room.
Genesis remote people.
They're kind of expensive, unfortunately, because I had like to buy a bunch of them. Hey, how are you? Pull up a chair or something. No, wrong one. Oh, it doesn't like two. Here.
It is really quick.
Or, so who's first?
First is just show. Young catalog and then
Okay. Okay. So areas. Do we know Alan's actually? Yeah.
no, I haven't seen him.
I don't know if I've ever met him. Kind of screaming at me on the phone.
But no, he is very visible.
I think I have met him once.
Yes, you have already agreed.
So, hello everyone. We'll be starting in about a minute because people are still walking in. So, walk faster. Seems like there's a bunch of people coming in now. Yeah, you have the notebook. Candy, I love you, sir. Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to the joint ops area and ops AWG meeting. Hopefully you're intending to be at the ops area and ops AWG meeting. If not, leave now or forever hold your peace. So welcome to ops area. I'm Warren. This is Benoit. Hey. We have a note well which we'll be displaying soon. That's the note well. Please make sure that you note it well. This has important legal stuff on it. I'm not going to try and interpret that for you. You should go talk to your company attorney or lawyer or rabbi or whatever. Can we go back to the agenda thing? So this is the ops area agenda part of the meeting. If there's any agenda bashing, please let's bash it now. Also, there are blue sheets. We will be circulating those. They are circulating. Please make sure you put your name on them. Otherwise, we'll get a smaller room next time. What are we forgetting? JavaScribes.
And we have Ignace next to you helping with the presentation. Thank you.
Yes. Do we have JavaScribes? We have a JavaScribe. Thank you, Joel. And who is going to do minutes? And who is going to do minutes? And thank you for volunteering, Wes. Thank you. And will you do them for both parts of it or just both ops area and ops AWG part? Thank you very much, sir. I'll give you some candy at the end of the meeting. Oh. And I think that's all of the boring administrivia out of the way. And with that, we will hop into our first presentation, which will be Joe, this one. please stand in the pink box.
Test, test. Good. Hi, my name is Joe Clark. I'm with Cisco, and today I'm going to talk about the Yang catalog, which I'm sure many of you have heard if you've been in other meetings such as NetConf or NetMod, or heard Benoit talk in the past month or year. Ultimately, what is this about? We're approaching this point where we've got a fairly good problem to be had. Yang is proliferating. We have a number of Yang modules being created, not just in NetMod, not just in NetConf, not just in Ops, but across the IETF and across standards development organizations and across vendors. We have a number of people working on Yang models and implementing these Yang models. That is, vendors putting them in their products and customers starting to consume them. Customers of those vendors starting to consume them. But that does beg a question. Is it sufficient enough just to have a Yang model written, just to have something modeled in Yang? And then once you have that module or that model written, is it sufficient enough to implement it? I say, okay, we're done. We've got it on our devices. There, have at it. What we've been seeing is, in general, this is, even though it's been going on for a while, consumers need help in order to better adopt this new way of thinking about network management, of thinking about configuration, of thinking about operational state. We need to develop a set of tools, a set of visibility into these Yang modules that can help the consumers, that can help new and experienced model developers, and can help organizations working with Yang models understand what is available, how to learn from best practices that others have done, and then where models can be used and found in the products or devices or service like controller architecture elements that these consumers are using. To that end, we have stood up this thing we call the Yang catalog. At https://yangcatalog.org, we've started to accumulate these open tools in order to help those parties, the module developers, the SDOs, the consumers, and the vendors. We want them to understand the models out there. We want them to understand how to learn, how to dissect these models, understand what people have already done leading up to today, so that their people aren't reinventing the wheel, and understand where they can use a Yang model in what vendors' products. More specifically, the tools we've created are around, first, a keyword search. So for example, you want to be able to find a Yang model that matches a specific keyword, or a node within a Yang model that matches a specific keyword. For example, a type def for ether type or MAC address. Already got a question with Wes.
Wes Herdiger, yeah. So one real quick clarification. When you say we have stood up, who is we?
Question is who is we? We right now, initially this was Benoit and myself stood this up. I mean, physically stood up the virtual machine that is the server. We've now, and I'm going to get to that point in a little bit, reached out to a number of vendors, a number of different SDOs, and other interested parties to contribute to this. So while initially the tools were put up by some of the validation work that Benoit was doing, some of the search functionality that I built, we now have other tools developed by a number of people from Cisco. We now have contributions from the BBF, Broadband Forum. We have vendors contributing metadata around their models from Huawei. We expect to see Juniper there soon, as well as the MEF is also just recently contributed some models. So the point being, we want this to be open. We want multiple vendors, we want multiple SDOs to be able to come here and contribute. And because everything we're putting up here is open source, we're saying anyone who wants to help code this, anyone that wants to help contribute, by all means, come and do this. In addition to the search, we have the ability to look at a module impact analysis. We'll look at all of these in a little bit. We can do Yang model validation across a number of a number of validators within the industry, like Yang, Yang-Lint. This can help module developers understand exactly how well their models do or fare with varying degrees of conformance. Most recently, in part of the hackathon, we have a validator for Yang-compatible regular expressions, and we're looking to do more with Yang model exploration. And by that I mean take a hierarchical or tree view of a Yang model, be able to adjust some of the values there, and be able to generate things like RPCs or the Yang development kit, another open source package, be able to develop direct Python code to go and manipulate Yang model data on devices. And finally, we want to do what we call a Yang implementation discovery, which is across all vendors, be able to find out what Yang models are supported at what levels in what vendors' products and with what software releases. In order to facilitate much of this, we need a bunch of metadata. Metadata about modules, metadata about the implementations of these modules. Benoit, myself, and some other developers have stood up a REST-like API in order to push that information. And as I mentioned, we already have the BBF, MEF, Huawei has contributed or pushed their metadata up, and a REST-like API to be able to pull this metadata back down. Digging a little bit deeper into the Yang search, just to give you a quick overview. As I mentioned, if you're looking for something like a specific type def, you want to see if someone has implemented a type def like this before and what they've done, maybe how mature that implementation is. You can use the Yang search to do that. And there's a number of different options you can see here that allows you to be able to get a fine-grained result of what you're looking for. We met with the IEEE this week, and one of the things that they commented on was they found some old revisions in the search results, old module revisions, thus translating into older node revisions. And they said, well, we don't like that. The Yang catalog is trying to catalog everything and move forward over time. As modules develop, we will collect new metadata. So we added just recently, as part of the hackathon, the ability to only show the latest revision latest revision per module. From a search results standpoint, this can be very useful both for people looking for a node, looking for something that they might want to manipulate on their device, as well as those Yang model authors. In this case, you can say, I'm looking for something called URI. I want to know where it's been defined, where it's probably most trusted, meaning is it a standard? Is its maturity level a standard? How many other modules are using this? And by using the search, they can do that. In fact, I saw an email today on the netmod list where our BBF colleague had made use of this to be able to identify is it ether type or ether dash type that's more prominently used. So there are a number of different use cases one can use for the search. And in addition to just showing you the search results, you can drill in to get a quick overview of the node details and launch out to the impact analysis for a given module. Our Ops AD, Benoit, has been quite successful at using the impact analysis to help drive module progression through the IETF and through some other standards bodies. The impact analysis shows you for a given module or given target module or target modules, how many other modules are affected by this and how many other modules affect this module. And by doing so, we can identify bottlenecks. That is, we can identify if there is a draft that needs to progress in order to get the target module further progressed as well, meaning towards a ratification or standardization. So this can be a very nice visual way of being able to do that. We also have the ability, because we're running these modules through validation, to spot modules that do not compile and make authors aware of that so that they can work on fixing those with respect to their standards development organization so that they do compile and they do validate. The other major piece of this, as I mentioned, is this API. In order to get a lot of what you saw here, like maturity, like the document from which a module is extracted, especially in order to get where a model might be implemented. in what vendor's device and in what software release. We need to be able to collect metadata. There are many things that we can extract directly from models, and we do, but there are other things that cannot be extracted, and that's why this metadata is important. So we've stood up a page that explains how one, being an SDO or a vendor, could contribute to this. So if you are a model author, be it a vendor model author or an SDO model author, you can push metadata about your individual modules, and we'll catalog that. And if you're a vendor who has implementation detail, same thing. You can push that via a REST API, and we will add into our API tree where your models are implemented and at what conformance level with what deviations. From a model metadata structure, we've actually modeled the API in Yang. Using the word model a lot, but that model is up there as well, and this is the tree view of it. Again, highlighting those fields that are mostly non-extractable. Same thing for vendor implementation, or vendor implementation metadata of models. Now, one thing I want to point out here is that we are evolving this constantly based on feedback. We got some great feedback at Hackathon 99, and we're going to continue to iterate this, add new leafs, new nodes, so that we can get the right amount of data out of Yang modules and make the catalog as useful as possible. In order to retrieve metadata, again, we have a REST API for that. We can, for example, find out just metadata about a specific model. Say, I want to know where a revision of the IETF interfaces, tell me a little bit about it from a metadata perspective, and then show me where it was implemented. And this is an example of that. We're able to see this particular model implemented in a few vendors' devices. We can also walk this from the other angle, meaning if I know a vendor, I know a platform, I know a software release, show me all the models implemented by that vendor, platform, and software release. So there's the two use cases we've identified thus far allow us to approach this tree in two different ways in order to get the information we want. And we fully realize there are probably going to be other use cases that come up out of this. And we are going to want to adapt, and that's why we say this, this approach, this way of collecting this metadata and the metadata that we collect will likely evolve over time. I mentioned that one of the things that came out of this hackathon was a regex validator. So we had a very interested participant who actually worked from remote that was able to stand up a Yanger, Yang RE, and the W3C GRET, a web-based front end to that, now standing off Yang catalog, so that model developers can test to make sure their regular expressions conform to the XSD syntax within Yang models, so that they absolutely are sure that their regular expression is going to validate and also is going to match the intended pattern that they want. And again, we've already gotten some feedback on this, and we expect more features and especially some more help text to be added to this tool as it progresses. In terms of results, overall results and next steps, Wes raised the question of who is we. This, again, touches on the people or the groups who have already contributed to some of this. Part of this work has spawned a draft that will be presented tomorrow, I believe, in NetMod. That is draft CLAW for Clark Klez, on the overall catalog, the model we are using to hold all of the metadata that describes the modules and their vendor implementations. As I mentioned when I opened this, if you probably heard Benoit talk in the last year, you've probably heard a little bit about this. It's that evangelization. It's talking to customers, talking to SDOs, talking to vendors to get them to contribute to this so that we can proliferate and make it easier to consume Yang models. Even though we have a draft submitted, the CLAW draft, we realize that that too will probably not ever move directly towards standardization. It's something that's going to be constantly changing as we learn new things. And we want to be very transparent with the work we're doing so that we've submitted it to show that, hey, this is what we're doing, and we expect that model to grow as we learn new things, as we hear new feedback. I did mention the italicized things on that, I believe, slide 4. We want to do more with respect to Yang discovery, to help people generate RPCs or RESTconf operations, or even generate code directly from Yang catalog tools. And we want to be able to implement a GUI, a web-based front end around that implementation discovery. So those are some of the next items that we have planned for the Yang catalog. And so far it's been somewhat successful, and when I see people use it, when I see Benoit advertise this out in terms of helping to get models in the IETF further towards standardization, it shows that there's certainly some need for this. And the fact that we've opened it up as much as we can, hopefully will entice the community to be able to contribute to it, offer feedback, and help make this a better set of tools that ultimately helps everyone do better with Yang models. What questions do you have? Do I want to mention bits and bytes?
Kent Watson, Juniper Networks. Not so much a question as a comment. I like where this is going. I especially look forward to the ability for some of the modules to be like service level modules and then native models, and that there'd be maybe translators, converters between the two. And who is providing these translators, what language they're in, I'm not sure, but I think it'd be an interesting development to have the ability for, the various stakeholders you discussed being able to identify, okay, yes, I want this service level model, but how do I get down to the device model? And, it might be a commercial tool, GPL, open source.
That's good. Thanks for that.
Andy Bierman, I'm still not seeing the higher level organization, what I called Yang packages a while back. Because Yang modules, the granularity is difficult to work with, and it's only going to get worse. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're probably familiar with DMTF Redfish. They have just released their schema package 1.0, and what that means is here's a whole bunch of modules that we have verified and claim work together, and they are meant to be used as a group. One obvious Yang package could be routing. Routing is being split up into many modules, and I'm just concerned that from the high level view from consumers, they're not wanting to look at 1,024 separate modules. Maybe they're wanting to look. What do you have for routing? What do you have for accounting? What do you have for this? Another project that's out there that's been doing great work, you probably know about Yocto Bitbake and the Open Embedded project. Open Embedded is taking on a problem that's 3 orders of magnitude harder than this, and doing a pretty good job of organizing it into layers and recipes and things that are manageable to make things work together. So I would like to see that next step of bundling things into packages. We know this set of modules works for routing. This is what we're claiming you should do for routing, that sort of thing.
So very specifically on that, we had discussed the idea or adding the Yang bundles or that type of thing. Routing is probably a great example of that. That is down the road. We have to tackle some things first, but in fact at the hackathon it was brought up, you should be able to say, I want to generate a Debian package for this or an RPM package for this. I don't know that we want to be the clearinghouse for downloading models, but I do like the idea of being able to show that bundle of this logical bundle of models is expected to work together for this higher level type operation or task.
Yeah, I didn't mean packaging literally like RPM or Debian. I just maybe that was a poor choice of terms. No, actually, I was on mid-police at Cisco for 10 years, and one of the biggest issues was getting developers to know what they can reuse. Yep. And so you're doing the right thing, the first step of really trying to tackle that. And you'd be surprised that how many people don't know that even in their own company that modules exist.
I remember you at Mid-Police, and I Yes, for 19 years, I've been with SNMP at Cisco, so I get that. And no, I knew you weren't talking necessarily about RPMs, but while we don't want to be that clearinghouse, we do want to offer that kind of logical bundle notion.
And I want to add something to that. This is Benoit speaking. So yes, we start to understand that having modules only is just not good enough. We need to have the metadata, the tooling. And the next step is the packages, as you mentioned, that at least the bundle. We started from the open config catalog draft and realized it was not doing what we wanted. But it's one of the fields which is in the open config draft. What Joe mentioned there is what we've been implementing so far. Right, so, and that will progress. So the bundle, yes. Another way of looking at the bundle is the tree type, right? We've been discussing NMDA and OpenConfig, etc. It will be there pretty soon. So it's another way to look at the bundle. And the last thing I want to say is that at the hackathon, we've been there since day one with all these tools, right? Maybe 10 hackathons so far. So you are very welcome to come, but we are also working on this in between hackathon with a Spark room with maybe 10 or 15 people now helping on a regular basis. So a lot of great tool requests, but feel free to help.
Any other questions?
And this will be, during the bits and bytes, we will be there to show you if you want to see this in details.
Thank you very much.
So the next one is for me is on semantic versioning, the structure of IETF spec and how I believe the IETF should be evolving. And that will build on what we learned from the first session, which is very good. Part of it will be done by Richard over there. I just want to say hi because I thought you were kind of sleeping, so it will be soon your time. So the background, during the ISG retreat, I spoke maybe for 1 hour on the latest trends on, data modeling driven management and what's happening with Yang and NetConf and RESTConf in the industry, right? In the industry, but also in the IETF. So I kind of did that along the different IETF meetings here. So there is nothing like really new, but out of this came I want to extract a couple of slides from that session, and then I want to draw the conclusions and the conclusions from the retreat. So yeah, I'm going to be quick, right? We've got a growing number of Yang models in the IETF. Fine, we know that. You've seen that type of slides for many times. Now, well, actually, at some point in time, we were telling there will be a tsunami of Yang models, right? And people were kind of laughing. Yeah, but now what's happening? We have that in the IETF. OpenConfig, Etsy, Cable Labs, ITU, Broadband Forum, OpenRoadM, SysRepo, DMTF. I'm missing some, right? So yes, Yang is over the place. It makes sense because we need to automate networks these days, right? Now, we could segment this between network elements and services. And it's almost the same picture, but I want to say it's not only to manage devices, right? We go up to the layers with that, with services. Again, being quick here because you probably know all of this. Now, I've been collecting, as you know, all the Yang models I know and validate this. That's how we started with the first hackathon. Now, if you don't look at the slide, try to guess how many I have. And directly I see people looking at the slides, that's funny. Try to guess how many I have in my virtual machine right now. If I deduplicate them, almost 2,000, right? 2,000 Yang models in the industry. So we start to have a good problem, but it's a problem which is way bigger than the IETF. This was one of the message that Joe was trying to relay with the catalog, right? It's not simply a service for the IETF, but for the industry. And there is a lot of kind of duplicate Yang models there. Now we could say, good problem to have, it's a success. And I'm thinking maybe slightly differently. We could say, yes, we move from MIPS to data modeling driven management, success, good. We can automate networking now, great. IETF, we did the protocols. We've got the spec for netconf and resconf, success. We've got multiple encodings with JSON and XML, success. Right, but on the data model part of it, this is where we need coordination. I've been dreaming for some time that my chart that shows the number of RFC-based Yang model would see the hockey stick curve. In the IETF, we still don't see that. Maybe, no, this is the syndrome of trying to do the best model day one, right? Which I believe is a dream, but okay. So the point is that we don't produce those models fast enough. Now, I've been mentioning, just to reply to Andy, that automation is as good as your data models, your tool change, and all the metadata. Next step being the bundle, which is, according to me, just one of the metadata. Now, in the hackathon, we developed all this, and Joe spoke about it, right? Now, what are we asking out of the different SDOs and the vendor? We ask them, can you please put all your models into GitHub, right? We will pick them from GitHub. We're going to extract the metadata you can extract. We're going to generate some of them, like the compilation result. And then you have to give up the extra set that we can't get by ourselves, like whenever BBF tells us the maturity level of specific documents. And then we're thinking, right, so we're asking all these SDOs, and again, with the IEEE this weekend, and they're doing it, right? They're putting their models in GitHub. So what do we do in the IETF, right? And this is where I've got like a small concern. How do we deal with Yang models in the IETF? You know, to produce all the reports, and you've seen, if you've been dealing with Yang model, unless it's a perfect one and you've got no validation issues, I guess that you've seen one of my emails telling, look at this report. Out of 4 validators, there are some warnings and mistakes. Now, the way I do it is that I do a cron job every day that gets all the IETF draft. I extract the models. I validate them. I look at the diff from the day before. I say, you post a new version there. Can you change this because there's a mistake in your Yang module? And you drop an email hoping that the people will act on this, right? And then if you don't forget, you repeat it after some time. Now, I mean, is this like, what? Inappropriate, not efficient, old-fashioned, or even stupid to work that way while we have mechanisms like GitHub, right? I would rather have like a pull request telling, change this in your Yang module, and that will validate. And I know it's documented, it will be there. It assumes that people will work from GitHub, right? But then I do the work a single time. It would be way more efficient. Someone would say, yeah, sure, that makes sense. Merge, done. End of story. So should the IETF adapt? I've been here for more than 5 years. Some people say too long as IAD. I can agree with that. I've been there for that long, and I believe that the IETF should adapt or must adapt to use RFC 2119. We're way too slow. We're not efficient to produce those modules. What do we need? A mechanism which is based on something like GitHub. We need to have like the semantic versioning in there. And Richard will be speaking about that in a couple of slides, making sure you're working up. But it means that we still have to produce RFCs at key points in time, right? Now, the point is that what we want to do is run a consensus call on the Yang module. And then whenever the working group is fine with the Yang modules, we produce the RFC that explain how to use it. The point to say, I have a Yang module, then I create a TXT file because that's the way it works in the IETF. Then I have to extract it. Point hopefully to the right line, because depending on how extracted, it might not be the right one. So it's more like running like OpenConfig, which by the way makes sense. And I'll get your question at the end of the slide. Now, I spoke to one big operator about that. He was telling me, you know, it's a game. And one big one who's typically sponsoring this IETF, he was telling me, and I'm trying to quote this, it's a game changer for the IETF. And each day you don't do it, you're close to the grave. Right? And I believe that, right? Netmod and netconf are kind of working like that with GitHub, but somehow it's not too clear if whenever people send like a pull request in Git, it needs to be discussed on the mailing list or not, or whether the message from GitHub should be sent to the mailing list. And I want to have a last thought here with L3SM, right? We had an RFC, fine. Working with closed, success, right? We produce RFC, we have it. One of the implementers wanted to implement it and found some issues, right? In the Yang part, okay, obviously, again, I said, maybe not obviously, but I mean, we're engineers, right? We can assume that we'll make mistakes, or at least we need to improve it. So in this case, I would like to run the process directly in GitHub on the Yang module to say, okay, we improve it. We all agree on this Yang module, good. Push, we create the RFC ID if we want. So, Diane.
Diane Bogdanovic, and you just mentioned the main problem. Usually people don't implement, actually in most cases, people don't implement until there is an RFC. And with Yang, we're writing software, and until you implement it, you really don't know if there is a bug, will it work or will it not work? So we have this issue that we're putting the cart in front of the horse. And unless we can change somehow how we will adopt the models and people will start implementing them earlier, that will continue being a problem. And there was a saying in the IETF from very early days that we believe in working code and consensus. And the working code is being forgotten and only consensus has stayed. But the working code is missing.
It's also part of this solution where I would like the Yang models to be easily accessible, and you'll see how we could tag them. And hopefully we will run the automation directly from GitHub for a specific working group, for a specific document, and people could just extract it and work from there.
I don't think it's an issue what tools we use. It's an issue that people don't implement them until they are, because the managers are saying, no, until it's an RFC, we don't want to do it. And this is something that for system interfaces made sense to a certain extent, although I disagree with that. But especially for models, we have to change, or we have to get, this has to change, otherwise this modeling effort will not be successful. Because for many drafts, for example, routing draft, which was one of the key drafts for all the other models, was 6 years in the draft status. And after 6 years in the draft status, it became an RFC. And I would ask a question, how many vendors implemented that draft? Actually, that RFC now.
So let me make a link with something different. Because obviously you've seen what you've seen from the catalog, but maybe I want to express some more things. One of the midterm ID with this catalog is to give a kind of scorecard to Yang models. And the couple of metadata that you've seen, like did compile, maturity level, included, imported by so many times. Then the next one you'll see is implemented like 10 times, right? And going with the scorecard, whatever we say in any SDOs that this is the thing that you have to do, it doesn't matter, because the scorecard there will be what count in the end. Whenever you see that this Yang model is implemented like 6 times, regardless where it's coming from, this is a de facto standard.
The one part that is missing there is the vendors that implemented it. I will go back, to the actual implementation out there in the world, because many of those are cross-referenced between drafts.
No. You missed the point. There was like a specific slide from Joe where you saw a couple of models implemented by vendors. Okay, the first one is my own company.
The legend wasn't clear, sorry. Because I saw different colors, I just couldn't read what was the
No, it's
color.
a different one. It's not the one with all the arrow, which is impact analysis, which is import, right? There was a different one telling, if you click on that Yang module, we've got the data, not the GUI yet. If you click on that Yang module, you will see it's implemented on ASR 9K 621, all flavors of software. And this is part of the scorecard I'm mentioning here. Richard, you want to?
Phil Schaefer, Juniper Networks. So one of the nice things we've done in Junos is to make it so that modules and the translation scripts to convert from module data to native data, all that in Junos is programmable. So we can take some of these modules that no one has any, very early, where you're not going to get any real vendor interest in doing an implementation. You can take those, take a Junos VM, load the Yang directly, make a translation script to the native, get some experience playing with it, see that it actually not only can represent data accurately, but also can be translated into something. And that translation mechanism isn't a standard, but it's a Python script, so just as a tool.
Andy Bierman. So a couple comments, Benoit. One is that our review process really discourages people from implementing early, because once it gets to the area director and then goes to the ISG, they can change anything they want, and your early work is thrown in the dumpster. You have to start over. So that's a significant problem. Another significant problem is we don't really understand how to use augment yet. We keep piling and piling on in large modules, and instead of shipping what we have as a core group of functionality, we keep piling on until it's what we call a kitchen sink MIB. Okay, and that's a problem as well. So it makes it longer and longer before that module actually gets shipped, because somebody thought of one more thing that we can do. Well, you're allowed to do that in a separate module that augments. It's okay. And in fact, it would help get the early work out the door. Really make a difference. And that's goes to what I was talking about with the bundles, is if you have a whole bunch of modules, you really need the metadata to pull it all back together.
I agree on the augment, on the review. What is your solution for that?
I have it as well. Go ahead. Yeah, I have a proposal for that as well. So, and I will go back to my, as a former ACL draft author. So ACL is turning into the kitchen sink when everything has to be thrown in. And the original idea was to use augmentation, start implementing early, and then adding for augmentation process, and essentially what has to be done, because we are somewhat, restricted by the RFC, create a high-level model that, provides, the logical functionality that we are looking for, and through the augmentation process, do it, make it closer to the low-level, technical model. Because most of them, from a logical perspective, we can create a high-level model that can be implemented widely, and then technical dependencies add them, later through the augmentation process. But majority of the working group members are disagreeing and saying, we have to put, all the technical details up front, and then they'll start using, the E feature. And from day one, I was very much against, the E feature functionalities, because this is exactly where you will be putting more and more into it. And that is one thing that I believe could make it faster, is saying, okay, here's the first RFC, it's a high-level model, we can start implementing it, at least create some of the common APIs, and then add more low-level technical details through the augmentation process.
So one quick one, because I would like Richard to present the solution there.
Yes. Not that I want to defend kitchen sinks, but sometimes I think the concern with augmentations is the structure has to be augmentable. I mean, and so people want to ensure that they've considered enough of the use cases that at least the structure won't be changed later on. So when you need to do the augments, at least the structure is there for you to augment. That that you have the right structure.
Okay.
So
Richard, up to you to explain the plan with GitHub.
So hi, my name is Richard. I don't know anything about ops. But I have written some specs that get used for things, and we've used GitHub to develop them. So I've been kind of acting as a scribe and interpreter for some of the ideas and problems that Benoit has had, trying to come up with some ideas for how we might try and make things a little better. So like, raise your hand if internet draft format is your preferred format for editing documents or Yang models. Like seeing 0 hands here. So, so maybe let's not do that. So it kind of started with the idea when I was chatting about this with Benoit, of like, could we just edit directly the things we care about? So like, if you've got a structure for a Yang model, just edit the Yang model, maybe have some explanatory text that sits next to it, and then call working group consensus on that as much as you can. It turns out you can't quite do that and get all the way to RFC. There's some process documents that require you to produce internet drafts at certain critical points of the process. But you can basically run the entire working group process just looking at structured documents or whatever format you want to use. So we wrote up a document. Let's see, I need the next slide here. Yeah, we wrote up a draft kind of describing how to look at kind of 2 problems. One is how do you develop IETF documents without using this internet draft format? So if you want to work in HTML or Markdown or directly on a Yang model or an XML schema or JSON schema or CBOR schema, whatever your preferred language is for working in as a working group, how can you do that while still meshing well with the IETF consensus process and kind of upholding all those standards of consensus and wide review and all that? So that was kind of one problem. How do we deal in alternative formats? The other question is how do we do some semantic versioning to provide a little more continuity and enable some more agility? So I think a couple of the points in the previous mic line were about how do we iterate a little faster? How do we have a little bit more agility in how we release specs? So the basic idea is, instead of having, the internet drafts as this ad hoc versioning system that terminate in an RFC, and the RFC numbers being completely disconnected from any semantic meaning of versions of the thing we're developing. Let's have a repo for each document that tracks the evolution. Actually, document is the wrong word. A repo for each model or each technology we're dealing with. So you might have a repo for TLS, say, or for Acme for a protocol, and you develop the protocol in that space, and then the repo provides the history of that document, and it's more of a coherent history. So you think in terms of, right now we think of in terms of internet drafts, and those provide sort of a timeline, a very coarse timeline of how the document evolves. So the idea here is to, a version control system has a constant stream of commits as you're working on a document, and the idea here is to kind of use tags in the repo to highlight essential critical points in that life cycle of the document. So for versions, when we want to do an implementation, we want to do interop, we want to kind of, as a working group, decide this is a version of the document. We just declare an official version. And for that, we want to kind of, with the proposal in this document, is to kind of adopt the major minor patch scheme that is pretty common in the software industry now. So, if you develop a new version of the protocol that is backward incompatible, you develop a completely new Yang model that has no relation to the previous Yang model for this thing, that's a major upgrade. So we're going to update that major number. If you're, say, adding a feature or adding some details or something like that, where you might still maintain backward compatibility, be able to reuse data in the old model, but also have some new features in the new model, that can be a minor update. And of course, if you release something, you get implementation experiences and you discover you need bug fixes, then you can, increment the patch level. And this is, kind of completely non-surprising if you've ever looked at semantic versioning before. What the document does is kind of describe how these relate to the IETF process. And the idea is that we need kind of increasing levels of consensus as the changes get more and more major. And I think, if I recall correctly, yeah, okay, we've got some of these here. So patch level, the idea is you should be able to make those level changes with the consensus of the working group. You don't need to go through the whole IETF consensus process to fix a bug. You might want to roll that into an full up RFC later if you make a more major update. But we can fix bugs more quickly with a lighter process. Minor changes like adding features. The default option is that yes, you'll go through the whole consensus process, but there's some ways you can opt out if the changes are sufficiently minor, and maybe just do that with working group consensus with the consent of the ADs. And then major changes are like RFCs. Like you always have to get IETF consensus, full review, full discussion around a major change. Let's see, and then so that's kind of how you deal with big official releases, and then these you kind of replace internet drafts with like feature branches. So when we start an RFC, start working on something new, you branch, you pick a label for that, just like you pick a name for an internet draft, and you tag up, tag versions, tag working versions as you go. When you need to have one for an IETF meeting, or for a hackathon, or some place where you need a stable reference that everyone's going to refer to for some period of time. So instead of having an internet draft be a document that is in its own it's kind of its own version space, it's good. The idea here is to have these as tags that fit into an overall history of the document. So you can see things like diffs between individual commits and understand why things are changing, what has changed between versions of the draft. So yeah, Mike Line. I think that's...
Andy Bierman, so yeah. You're aware that the Yang update rules don't apply to a work in progress. We're allowed to keep changing a work in progress all we want. We make it in illegal changes to Yang modules all the time in internet drafts. And so, I mean, this problem goes back at least 10 or 15 years in the IETF is how do we know that this work in progress has some special meaning being, we call them snapshots or something at one point. But even that snapshot can be tossed out and all kinds of changes made. So really, this kind of semantic versioning only really applies to the published modules.
Absolutely.
But we're not patient enough to wait for the published modules. So going back to my previous point, get the modules started, get it out. You've heard of the agile development process? Well, we need to do that because we're not doing it now.
Yeah. So part of the what the draft says about these multiple levels of version change is that some of these levels of official versions can come with lower process requirements, so you can make a published version without going through a whole bunch of heavyweight process. And so hopefully you can have those tighter cycles and be a little bit more agile. But also you need to have some work in progress stuff that is outside the official version process so that you can do things like throw it away and figure out how you're going to change the official version. Yeah.
Actually, one interesting comment was made yesterday during the working group when they said, oh, we might have to release a new draft by November. And the working group chair said, oh, if you really plan it by then, I would make a last call at the existing model and just to get it out because, we cannot wait much longer.
Yeah.
Hey, Richard, this is pretty cool stuff. Elliot Lear. 2 questions. First, what is the difference between a minor and what is the intended difference between a minor change and a patch change in terms of, what do you think the process difference is?
So I think if we go back, I think we kind of envisioned some loose equivalences to existing processes. So a patch or a bug fix is kind of similar to an erratum on a current RFC. And so so like
AD approval or something?
Yeah, errata get marked with AD approval. So you could envision some similar process here. And so likewise, the minor updates kind of get mapped to update RFCs. And so, most of the time you'd expect those to go through RFC. It may be, if we want to get some more agility in the process, we don't require all of those to go through the whole process if they're minor enough.
Okay. Second question is, where do you expect the repository to be? Is it GitHub or for these documents?
So the document we're discussing here, not the subject documents, doesn't actually even specify anything about Git. It just assumes you have a version control system that kind of roughly tracks his commits and has some tagging capability. I think what exactly the repos are that we use for this is going to be a good problem for working groups and ADs and folks to chat about. I believe there's been some work already on, I mean, obviously there's several working groups making a lot of use of GitHub right now. I think there's also some other hosts that are being used for that. But I think the interest in GitHub has already gotten some people thinking about how do we maintain control of destiny here and be able to recover in case GitHub explodes and things like that. So, I mean, there's obviously those sorts of considerations with any kind of repo hosting provider. And so I think that there's some work already started on that due to some use of GitHub already going on.
So the other comment I'll just make is this is very useful, I think. At least I think it will be. The other problem, which I think is also interesting, is how we churn on the models while we're doing development, such that you don't have to continuously churn on internet drafts, and having some sort of include mechanism for the RFC editor to move forward. I realize that's not your particular bailiwick, but it's something that it would be nice if we can sort that. I think I had heard rumblings that somebody was working on that, but I'm not sure if that's the case.
Yeah, I think one thing that's not in the slides that I believe is in the document is that it's at certain points, I think when you submit a document to the IESG, it has to be in internet draft format. So there's a little bit of presumption that at some point, even if the working group is working primarily directly on the model and maybe with some supporting text next to it, there's going to need to be some tooling that takes all that and wraps it up and bundles it into an internet draft that can go to the IESG for approval and go to the RFC editor. Because them's the process we got. Until we update those process RFCs, we got to work with them. Yes, please.
Phil Schaefer, Juniper Networks. 3 comments. One is you'll need more than tags because you also need branching. You'll want to be able to patch published versions and non-published versions.
Yep.
Well, multiple versions of existing documents. The second is if you look at so when I did the initial netconf draft way back when, we used to. The
chairs are telling me we have 2 minutes left.
2000 in 2000 when we started this, I used a tool that we've used for. I want to say 80% of the tools inside the netconf area, netconf and netmod, but that's probably an exaggeration. But more than between 50 and 80% use a tool that takes text, turns it into fancy stuff, allows you to include modules, and behave in insane manners. So that part isn't that part we have, but we need to do more in terms of announcing it and documenting it so that other people follow that and use the tools. I mean, you use a standard make file as you say make, it generates your stuff. Make check, it does like ID nits and runs pyang on the yang modules. Just all kinds of cool crap. And the third point is returning to Andy's point about base modules and augmentation. That really is key. I think the poster child for we really suck is the syslog model, which is now at 15 or 16, and is drawing on 2 years for the simplest model that everybody agreed to, and it's just taken forever. And the last.
That's a shame.
It is. It's a public shame. It's a humiliation, saying that even as we move forward, we are still. We're still Neanderthals. So, and a large portion of that, I want to say the last 4 or 5 revisions were all about TLS and security, and all of that could have been augmentation. We could have been done with this. Even 10 revisions was horrible, but having been, we could have been done. I think 7 was a year ago, so we could have published and been done.
All right, good. So we're out of time. So quick last 2.
to be added, for example, for the Young catalog, the average age of model that is not published yet?
Lee Howard, thanks. I love this, and I really want to see this go forward. I support this. Even if you talked about there may be some process stuff that we need to update, we need to, and this may be, I don't know if it's working group chairs, ADs, I don't see any, who are the policy wonks in the room, need to keep track of what might need updating if this is incredibly successful, especially if we start to consider doing things like this beyond just Yang modules, which I think is contemplated, or sort of, I infer it from what you're talking about here. I don't think that let's do iteration on text, whether it's model text or whatever, is the hard part, is the interesting part here. I think using Git as a discussion platform for how we're doing our work is really the interesting, juicy part. Versioning, yeah, okay, Elliot disagrees and he's yawning. So I want to keep track of that, and but you absolutely want to go do this. Oh yeah, of course. I always have to say, GitHub doesn't support IPv6. Wah.
All right, good. So actually, Carlos, I'm sorry, but we have to cut the line. We're late already. I would appreciate if you could send your feedback to the mailing list.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So these were actually 2 sessions, but we including a lot of the Q&A in there, which is a good thing. So thank you, and we'll have the OPSAWG meeting now.
Who shared the slides? Who shared the slides? You shared the slides? Okay, okay. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the OPSAWG. And this is chaired by Ignace, Tianran, and Joe. And let's welcome our new working group chair. And Joe, would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, it's a little anticlimactic now. I just presented. Joe Clark. I've been at Cisco now 19 years, even though I may not look it. And as Andy got out of me, I've been doing network management, operational type support, as well as now more programmatic with Yang and NetConf. So I look forward to bringing that experience to OPSAWG and to the ops area in general.
Okay, thank you. And note well, please understand the note well and those important legal issues. Basically, all your contributions to IETF, including your presentation, write-up, video, audio, need to follow the rules. And
Notewell has changed since last meeting. RFC 8179 on intellectual property rules was published. Please make yourself aware of that.
There are 5 active working group documents. Firstly, the CAP web alternate tunnel. We adjusted the editors since some of them has lost the connections. And the new revision addressed all the previous comments, and we sent it to the security directorate for early review before the working group last call. The IPFix BGP community document is in progress, and the author updates the document based on the working group discussion, mainly about extended community, large community, and wide community. And the discussion also generates a new requirement on IPFix extension. And later, the author will report the 2 drafts. And the mod work is progressing well. The author will conclude the discussion and the status of the draft. We newly adopted the service model explained document. It's a very interesting work.
With the experience of chairing L3SM and L2SM, the authors explained the concept on service models. The TACUS protocol is also in progress. As the shepherd, Ignace can report the status of the draft.
So developments with the TACUS document. It comes in waves. Sometimes there's a peak of activity, then there's quite a long silence. The version has not been updated for 5 months now. The authors chose not to discuss this in Prague for the reason that they did not have enough time to finish their current editing before the document cut off. And the chairs are not concerned that much about the progress of this document, but getting a little bit worried for 2 reasons. One, the process seems to be rather slow. The second, the process is not very public. Authors are working on comments mostly by providing private feedback, but not on the mailing list. So those are the 2 aspects that authors are being encouraged to address. They promised to do that, and therefore there will be something like a checkpoint 1 month before the cutoff date for the Singapore, whether there is sufficient and visible progress, and that work addresses the comments which have been made on the mailing list. If there is no evidence of such progress, then likely chairs will need to think about assigning an editor or making suggestions to change the office of the document or assign somebody who will simply do the editing work. So far, that is not happening until before the Singapore.
Okay. All the documents are very readable, and we encourage you to review and comment. And that's all for the working group status, and let's continue with the presentation. The first one, Matt.
Hi, everybody. Elliot here. So this is an update since our meeting in Chicago on what's happened with the draft. Next slide, please. I'll try and keep it brief because I realize you got a long agenda. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of work done. For those of you who've been keeping score, basically there have been a handful of changes, but some of them are big. As you know, the MUD model is essentially an augmentation of the ACL model. And as the ACL model has gone through major revisions, and you were treated in this very working group to a lovely display of, shall we say, Cisco on Cisco arguing with one another in the last draft, hopefully waiting on the ACL model to be done. A lot of work has progressed there. However, we're still pretty much normatively blocked on the continued work on that model. That having been said, what we've done thus far is align the MUD model to the interim model and the ACL model so that these things stay relatively in sync. So there's a small amount of work done here, but one of the things that's been done in the ACL model is that everything is now optional. And that works just fine using the feature statement if you happen to be using netconf, which is not what MUD does. So one of the things we have before us is, what do we put in the document in terms of stating what is assumed to be present when you define a MUD model? Now, the way that MUD works, right, if you recall, is we're using abstractions like allow access to the same manufacturer, or allow access to my controller, or allow local access, or allow access to domain. None of these things are IP addresses. That's really good. None of these things are MAC addresses. That also happens to be pretty good, because what we want people to do is abstract out the local deployment information. Well, if you've done that, right, most of the changes that are going on in the ACL model, A, don't affect us, and B, we probably want to make a statement, maybe even a very strong statement, that you shouldn't do things like have IP addresses in a MUD file. So this is something that we need feedback on. The other change that we've performed is that we've begun to modularize the model just slightly based on some feedback that I got from Ainer, who some of you know, who said, well, this is great if you're only ever going to do ACLs. What if you're going to do something else? And so I said, I don't know. You know, you tell me. So he came up with a recommendation, and that was to essentially have inbound and outbound communication paths to the devices, amongst which ACLs could be one of those things. And so if you look at the new version of the draft, this is what it does. And that leads to a couple of other items. One of which is, even at this IETF, I've been approached not fewer than 3 times about means to extend the model, means to extend MUD. Now recall that, again, we're not using netconf as a communication path. So capabilities exchange is not part of the current function. So we have a different extensibility model inside the draft, which is integral to the model. It's important to get the extensibility model done correctly. And so I'm asking people to take a good look at that in the next couple of days and weeks, and I'll prompt people on the list. So just to make sure that we have our extensibility model done correctly. The way it's done right now is essentially there's a list of extension names that you can have. I think it's a leaf list, if memory serves correctly. That you can have, and based on that, then you can instantiate. Essentially, you're telling the implementation, here's what you can expect to see, and everything else you should ignore if you don't understand it. And that's the basis of the extensibility. Please comment, and if you comment and don't like what you see, come up with an alternative or propose an alternative, because we'd like to get this right. Finally, the last change we made was that we're in process of tweaking direction initiated. It became clear to us that in some people's implementations, they find it hard to do that for other than TCP. And so the idea is we're going to limit that to TCP for the moment, and if people want to expand it out to UDP, they should do so as an extension. So those are the big changes since the last call. There's one big change that didn't happen that has to happen, which is that the examples have to be updated. Also, for those keeping score, I have this thing called the MUD file maker that has to be updated for the last, based on what's in the last draft, and I will do so in the next couple of weeks. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the examples need to be updated a little bit more. We need to decide what we're going to do about features, whether any features are expected, whether we should simply say only the MUD features should be used. And the reason this is, again, the reason this is important was we're really using the ACL model for its structure, not necessarily for the features. But maybe there's a feature or two we want to list, like, I don't know, the TCP capabilities. So I'm asking people to review the extension mechanism. While I'll try to do an update in the next couple of weeks, to the draft, I'm not going to ask the chairs for another last call until the ACL model is done, and I'm breathing down the neck of the person who's taken over that to say, please get it done, as I did here last time. And so the other thing is that hopefully we'll have some open source out there in the next couple of weeks.
Elliot, would you say that people should review now or wait for your next rev in 2 weeks?
I'd like the extensibility components reviewed in particular now, and then the examples and the an actual model reviewed after I get the next version out. And so what I'm aiming to do is ask you for a last call by September 1st. And when I mean last call, I mean last working group, last call.
And your document include the EM module, and you may need to check the NMDA guidelines.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I'll be that Benoit will be breathing down my neck about that if nobody else. Yes. Yeah. See? Questions, comments? How many people have read the draft? Cool. Okay. Anybody else implementing? I know a couple of people are in here. Could use a couple more implementations. I think I know that some people didn't raise their hand that I know that they are. So All right. With that, I'm done.
Thank you. And next one, service models explained.
Hello everyone, my name is Qing Wu. I will present the service model expand on all the behalf. And this draft actually identify a list of service model that is defined in the IETF. So we clarify the relationship of this service model, clear some misconception for this service model definition. So history of the status, and this draft has been around several IETF meetings, and we revise 7 types to address a list of comments based on discussion on the list and some offline discussion. So just this draft got adopted before the Prague meeting, and we made one more revision because we received one comments actually fixed some typo. First, clarify the relationship with the YANG model classification draft that is defined in the net mode. And YANG model net classification draft has already been stable, has already in the publication status, and so we cannot change it. Actually, for YANG models classification draft defined in the net model, classify YANG model into 2 types. One is network service model. The second is network element model. So this caused a few debate about our draft. Since we discuss the service model, we think service model definition need to be refined. So what our draft does actually, we actually provide the foundation, provide a context description for model that used by the provider to describe the network service in communication with customer. So the customer can use this service model to describe the service characteristics or service requirements to the provider. So how to use this model? Actually, you can implement as a software. This software can be part of the management system. And so they can provide actually dynamic exchange for this service model parameter. Also, you can implement as some kind of portal page or some kind of form. So the customer can fill the parameter in this form and submit this form to the provider. So provider can take action on that. So the example for service model, we have FCC 8049 that already be published in L3SM working group, and we also have L2SM worker that in progress in L2SM working group. So this service model, unlike actually network element model, is cannot code implement in the network device. So that's a difference. So how we address the overlapping with YANG model classification draft, and actually based some discussion with the YANG model classification draft author, we reach agreement. L2SM and L3SM service model are both network service model. But we think network service model has a broader meaning, so we need to extend it. So that's why I motivated for us to write this draft. So how to address this overlapping for YANG model classification draft? Actually, we actually ensure the definition can be broader to cover the L3SM, L2SM service model. And we also actually update, ask author to update the reference and some description about the L3SM. So YANG model classification draft can move on. And so for our draft, we try to get in line with the YANG model classification draft. So most of the change actually ensure the reference to the YANG model classification draft is correct. And we as we said, actually, we think the network service model has a broad meaning. So we further broke down the network service model into the customer service model and the service delivery model. So, so how to position these different service model in this kind of architecture? We actually broke down the orchestrator into 2 layers. We have service orchestrator, we have network orchestrator. So we can position the customer service model on loss boundary interface of the service orchestrator. And we also position the service delivery model actually between the service orchestrator and the network orchestrator. So for the figure we updated actually for YAML model classification draft, they originally have some a figure, so we add some additional in green, and we think this is something useful. And so for the next step, actually, we think if people think still have some concern on the relationship with YAML model classification draft, please tell us, and we will actually need to focus understand the relationship and take action to polish the draft to address that. Additional, actually, for EVP is not a part of the YAML model classification draft figure. So we think actually we as also we think this EVP is useful additional. And if you have some concern, please let us know. Besides this, we think this draft is ready for the last call. We like solicit the review from the community. That's all. Thank you.
Any questions?
I'll add clarification. Joe Clark, as an individual contributor on the EVPN, initially when I read the draft, I was confused as to the intent as to inform changes in the classification draft. Adrian and I went back and forth, and I'm fine personally as a contributor if you leave that in there, sort of an augmentation, so to speak, of that figure. How much more, back as Chair had on, how much more text do you think is needed? There's been already discussion on the list about last call on what do you have tangible plans to add more text or to update the draft, or are you waiting just to hear more feedback?
Yeah, I talked with my colleagues. So we think actually this draft actually already in good shape. We just want to better understand if there's some confusion about this relation with the YAML model classification draft. If there's none, we think this draft is stable. Yeah.
Okay, as you have, there are some work still to do. So I think we can wait for your revision, and we move the last call discussion in the mailing list. Is that okay?
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then the next one, the IPFix related work.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zhenqiang Li from China Mobile. The title of my presentation is Export BGP Community Information in IPFix. So the main content, traffic aggregation in BGP community granularity is useful for several applications, such as backbone network traffic engineering. So this traffic introduces several new information elements in IPFix to export the BGP community information of a specific traffic flow. There are several kinds of BGP communities defined, including the standard community, the extended community and the large community. The community container is still IDR working group draft. So in this version, the information elements to export BGP standard community, extended community, and large community are included. We defined 3 information elements for each kind of BGP community. The first one is about the community itself, which carries exact one community value. And the other 2 are the basic lists of the first one. They are corresponding with the source IP address and the destination IP address of a specific flow, respectively. Because the community values corresponding with the source IP address or destination IP address of specific flow may be 0 or more, so we use the type basic list. For the BGP community container, we do not include it in the current version. And I don't think we should include this kind of community in this document, because the BGP community container has totally different encoding format. The previous 3 kinds of BGP communities have the encoding format in fixed size, and the BGP community container has the variable size. It uses the type, length, and value encoding format. And different kinds of types of BGP community containers may have different encoding formats for the values. In the current version of the BGP community container document, the type 1 community container is defined. It is called the white BGP community. Its format is shown in the right figure. We can see that it is also variable because it consists the TRVs again is in the optional part. The second reason is the purpose. The BGP community container has totally different application purpose. BGP community container is mainly used to deliver the locally defined policy parameters to the BGP speaker. And what we want to know is to get the traffic information in BGP community granularity. And besides, the BGP community container is still a working group document. Many types will be defined. And if we include this kind of community in my document, we have to update our document accordingly. The other issue that we talked about in the previous face-to-face meeting and mail list is about the IPFix message length. Does one IPFix message have enough space to fit all the BGP community related to a specific flow? The answer depends on the BGP features that the IPFix exporter supports. If the IPFix exporter doesn't support the BGP extended message, the answer is yes, because the maximum length of one BGP message is 4 kilobytes as per RFC 4271, and 64 kilobytes for one IPFix message. If the IPFix exporter supports the BGP extended community, the BGP extended message? The answer is no, because the maximum update message size of BGP extended message is 64 kilobytes. So the IPFix exporter has to handle the IPFix message properly. For example, truncating the IPFix, the BGP community information if needed. To solve this problem completely, we extend the message length of IPFix from 16 bits to 32 bits. The proposal will be presented after this document. So you will all agree that the BGP community container is not suitable to be included in this document. I think this version is stable for the working group to do the last call. So that's all. Thank you.
Right. Can we please see show of hands who has read this and also accompanying IPFix extension documents? Right. And how many of those who read are operators who intend to use or see a need for this or intentions for deploying this? All right, one hand, two, three, excellent, right. Pretty much the same. First question was who has read, and there were probably a couple more hands more, 5 or so, and who of those are operators and who have interest in this work. Speaking as a working group member, individual member, it's good that you have covered extended messages. Those are eventually going to happen. But I would think that you need to be realistic about the number of communities that you see in actual deployments. If you look at the current global, public global routing table, the average of standard communities count is around 6-7. And 95% of them are less than 10. In private deployments, certainly you can see the use where there are much larger numbers of communities. So the question whether you need to extend IPFix probably needs to be raised, and IETF is not likely the right organization for that. It's much closer to the operational community events. Whether there is an actual need to have support for that many of the communities. So it's just a comment.
Okay. What happens here? Rüdiger for Deutsche Telekom. I think I'm seeing questions that kind of follow Ignas, the type of issues that you were going after. I think the question of under what circumstance are implementations actually realistic? Some of Ignas, your concerns are kind of scalability things, I would say. And I wonder whether we actually have collected some comments from with addressing the actual feasibility of this from the implementer side, and actually for the implementer and the operator side, I would assume that some ideas about what configuration to limit the limit, focus, and filter the information that actually goes into this probably would be really important. Like if I were thinking about using that kind of information, I'm pretty sure I would really go after and say, yes, I have a certain filter of the communities that are relevant for getting statistics like the net flow here, and I have plenty of other communities that I certainly do not want to exacerbate the scalability problems.
So am I right summarizing that what you're saying is this document would certainly benefit from operational consideration sections?
So yes, I think you can configure the filters on the exporter to limit the communities to the ones that you want to be exported to the collector, right? And if you don't need all the BGP communities covered in this document, you can state what you want in the template in IPFix. So the exporter will export the information that you want according to the template.
I'm John Heasley from NTT. I'm curious about how many operators would apply or see the application for this draft in business intelligence. So pulling stuff to determine where a route arrived in from the network, that sort of thing, versus, I mean, there were very few hands that seemed to have interest in it, which I think is odd. So who sees it as an application for business intelligence? Just one? Interesting.
Right. So, as a recommendation, it really would be good that you socialize this with the operators, with the operations community, not only in IETF, and add in the operational consideration section to your document. Thank you. No, to socialize all of this idea and the need for having that many of communities to be exported, of all the types. All of them are used, all of them are in deployment in the field. Just a quick note, could you be quick with this because you are really out of time of your slot?
So this is the companion document, the proposal about the extended length message spot for IPFix. The main content is to update the IPFix specification by extending the IPFix message length from 16-bit to 32-bit to accommodate longer information. The following two scenarios will be covered in this document. The first one is one IPFix message consists of many small information elements where each element is 8 bits or 6 bits long. And the other scenario is the one IPFix message consists at least one information element which is longer than 64 kilobytes. So how to achieve it? We extend the length field in IPFix message header, the set header, and variable length information element. The specifications about other fields in those handle headers and information elements are unchanged. So for backward compatibility, we need a new version of IPFix to support the extended message length. So Anna is solicited to assign the new version. I think 11 is perfect. And for the next step, please read this document and comment in the mail list. And since the requirement is clear and the content of this document is pretty simple. So I think it's ready to be adopted by the working group. That's it. Thank you.
Right, thank you for that. And probably I met a question on, not for you, but for the working group, I met a question on the need of extending IPFix to accommodate information elements that potentially can be larger than the currently be carried. Or maybe raising the question of whether fragmentation is needed in IPFix. Simply a mechanism that can carry information elements which are larger than the current container. Not that I would be expecting the question right now. Could you please speak up on the mailing list? And if you have use cases for that, please tell so and the requirements, potential requirements for extending IPFix. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, interactive queries. Could you please try doing that in 9 minutes because we are quite short of time?
So what's the next big thing in network? That must be something I'm going to talk about, right? But no, I'm just kidding. I think the next big thing is about using big data analytics, artificial intelligence, and the machine learning algorithms to to realize fully automated network operations and keep human being out of the control loop. That's why some vendors and the operators actually initiated some proposals about the future autonomous network or self-driving network. But before we realize this long-term vision, we have to realize that the foundation of this vision is actually the deep insight to the network to gain the full visibility of the network. So that's needs some technology called telemetry. So recently, there's some new trend for the network telemetry technologies, such as allow user to subscribe streaming data from network devices, also use model-driven telemetry technologies, and also allow user to even customize the data they want to collect from the network data plane. And also several technologies related to machine learning and artificial intelligence has been applied for data analytics. Here, I just put some key takeaways up front. So to realize the network visibility, we first understand two things. The first is that network data is really a big data. To fulfill the many applications requirement, we need to gain the full visibility to the network. But the network generates too much data. Not only all the data packets, user traffic pass through the network. Also, each network device will simultaneously generate tons of data. Due to the limited resource, it's very difficult to gain to be able to collect all the data for analysis. But another trend is the network is also increasingly programmable, right? The user can define its behavior now. So it's possible to actually provide the on-demand visibility to meet all the applications requirements. So that's why we propose this key concept called Dynamic Network Probe, or DNP. So the DNP is basically a piece of functions to do the customized data collection and pre-processing. It can be realized through the runtime programming. Yes, you can insert a new piece of code to your system at runtime. Also, you can do that through configuration. If you have pre-allocated resource or pre-implemented module in your system. You can just configure it to enable it. And also, from the user perspective, the user really doesn't care how this DMP is implemented. It can be directly embedded into the fast pass, or it can be implemented in the slow pass control processor. And even they can be split in the two parts. So one part just handle something, and jointly they can provide the full required function. So I just talk about this custom data processing and the event monitoring is basically what the DMP is supported. And there are two key deployment approaches, either from programming or configuration. If it's a programming, that means we need to support some runtime loadable function modules to the system. If it's through configuration, basically we just enable some existing probe model in the data pass. So here are some key use cases for DMP. The first one is to support in-band network telemetry or the in-situ OEM. There are two scenarios we can apply the dynamic probes. The first one is to support some customized data generation functions. So user can define what data, new data they want to collect, and then ask the packet to carry this data, and so they can collect them somewhere else. Also, there are many possible configurations from the management plane. So they can use a dynamic interface to modify the configuration dynamically to customize how they want to get the streaming data back. There are some other use cases due to the time limits. I won't talk about them. You can look at the draft. So there are different type of DMPs. We summarize these into three groups. They can be node-based data type. They mainly concern the state and the status of each individual node in the network. Or they can be the path-based data types. They mainly concern the state and status of a designated path in the network. The last group is a flow-based class. They just concern the state and status of any specific flow in the network. So these different data types doesn't necessarily to be exclusive with each other. So some data type can be derived from some other types. So that's totally possible. So
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Okay, I'm almost done. So the overall architecture to support the dynamic network probe is to use that for supporting the interactive query. Right, the applications can have a requirement for any type of data. So they just basically use some query interface to ask for data. So the data can be compiled into a set of dynamic probes. The probes are inserted to the system data plane and runtime, and then start to collect data and feed data back to your application. The application will continuously refine their further queries to the system. So you can see this is a highly dynamic process. It can only happen in the runtime. So there are many different requirements. So we need an application interface from the application to the system. Also, we need standard source-bound deployment and the data collection interface. Some examples like gRPC and netconf. And also, we need to be very careful that DMP shouldn't, modify the forwarding behavior or even affect the forwarding performance in the system. And we need to support multiple DMPs in parallel because many applications each may have their own data requirement from the data plane. Also, there are many different challenges we are facing, like first of all is the security and the safety issues, because now we allow some kind of dynamic change to the data plane at runtime. So we need to be very careful about that. to know for any intentional and all unintentionally change to the phony behavior. And also we need to support network-wide deployment. Multiple nodes need to be to collaborate together, to cooperate. So they need to work in concert. We need to avoid any performance impact to the actually forwarding. And also we may need to consider some innovations in device and chip architecture to make the implementation more efficient.
We're out of time.
Okay.
Quickly, who has read the draft? And we have time for one question. All right, it's around 10 hands. Thank you. Right, and next is Yang model for NAT. Please, 9 minutes or less.
Yeah, so hi everyone. So I'm very pleased to present this draft on behalf of my co-author. So this is just a quick background on the draft. So this is a draft which is here from since 2 years. Several iteration of the draft has been went so far. We received various comments, including the from NAT experts, especially for instance from Danwing, and also for one implementers. And since the Behave working group, which is normally supposed to work on the NAT specific aspects, has been closed, we are looking for our working group to endorse this work. So basically, this model is covering various RFC standards, including the small NAT, the NAT that you can have in your CPE, and the NAT that you can have in the network as a large-scale NAT, but also all the IPv6 flavors, including NAT64 and NPT v6. The NPT v6 is the IPv6 prefix translation and not the address translation. And we cover both the individual and the portion translation. And we cover all the BCP that are produced by the IETF for the ICMP, UDP, TCP, and so far, and the recent updates that are produced by the TSV working group. We support both configuration and the set management in the model. There is no need to replicate what you have already in the draft in terms of the structure of the model that you can refer to the draft to that. What is out of scope? We are not dealing with what you call the dynamic explicit mapping. That means that if you are using a dedicated protocol to instruct your NAT to create per forwarding, we are not dealing with that. For instance, the PCP, we have a dedicated document for that. There's also the dynamic, what is called the dynamic NAT assignment. This is something which is out of scope so far from the document because there is no standard in the IETF. There's only informational, but it's only individual. So there is no need for us to take into account this kind of algorithms in the model. And of course, the last one with the DCP marking, we are not covering it because we don't want to do the port overloading by playing with the DCP value to multiply the number of NAT mapping that you can have with one single IP address. So this is out of scope. The main point I am here today is that there is a dependency of this model that because we have two other models that are developed in the software working group, mainly the DSLite one and also the MAP-E and MAP-T models that depends on the NAT-Young model. Because we have this dependency, what we have done so far there, because if you want to progress in the publication process, we have just cloned what we have in the NAT model there in the DSLite, which is not a cleaner design. So that's why we are coming here to ask the adoption of this for this working group so that we can report back to the software working group so that they can update this both draft that we have there. So that the DSLite model will be built as we are augmenting the NAT module, and also we'll point to this one by the MAP-E and MAP-T model. So this is the end of my presentation, and questions are welcome. And I would like to ask for adoption in this work. This is something we discussed on the mailings and also in private with one of the co-chairs.
Okay, thank you for that. Questions?
Quickly, Lee Howard. Since it supports both NAT46, NAT64, does that mean it implicitly also supports 464 XLAT? I think the answer is yes, and I'd like a note saying that. That'd be useful.
Sorry?
Because it supports NAT64, I think it also implicitly supports 464 XLAT, and I think that would be, or at least the XLAT side of 464. Having a note saying that would be useful as a use
usability statement.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, it's not the xlat, it's the clat function that you are referring to, I guess.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
But anyway.
And there's a typo, I think, says, this document does make any assumption how internal hosts are attached to a given net instance.
Sorry?
There's a sentence, this document does make any assumption how internal hosts are attached. I think it probably should say does not make, that's just a typo.
Thanks for catching that.
That's all.
Thanks.
And I have one clarification question. And do you consider the server net or the destination net? It is used for the server load balancing and will change the destination address.
This is not in the scope so far, but we are open to include it if this is a feature that is requested. Yeah. Okay. So far it's not supported, but this is something we can add.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for that. We will then bring this question to the list and soliciting for feedback and poll for adoption.
Okay. Thank you.
Nicola, on Yang for FSM events and other synchronous things.
Hi, good afternoon. So this draft proposes Yang models for events and finished state machine in order to increase the programmability of network devices, which are modeled with Yang. One of the use cases that we have considered for this draft is the case of flexible transponders. So transponders supporting multiple modulation formats and coding. So these transmission parameters can be set depending on the optical physical layer. For example, QPS key is more robust than a 16 QAM modulation format. And in case these physical layer conditions change, these transmission parameters can be readapted. So the draft, the objective of the draft is to instruct network device of how to reconfigure itself. So the control scenario is the one of ABNO. These three modules, functional modules, are the one that we are considering. So the SDN controller configures and reconfigures the data plane, and the on-dem handler receives and processes the alarms. So at the state of the art, if without considering the model that we have submitted in this draft, if something happens at the physical layer, so a degradation, an alarm is sent to the on-dem handler. Then new transmission parameters are computed, and the SDN controller reconfigures the data plane devices. So then the service is recovered. So this workflow is time consuming. What we can do with the draft we submitted is to pre-instruct the network devices on what to do if something happens. So if this degradation happens, the network devices can promptly reconfigure themselves because they know about this finite state machine, and the reconfiguration is faster. So the Yang model is based on these three. We have a leaf called event, for example, a bit error rate increase. We have the subleaf filters to further express the event. So to put a threshold, for example, on this bit error rate. And then we have the reaction, for example, the change of modulation format. And the field execute recalls an RPC that if actually encapsulate the task of the operation for reaction. The finite state machine module extends this one, the previous one of events, by including state information and transition. So considering the previous use case, assume to have this service working normally, we are at the steady state. If the bit error rate increases over a threshold, we can adapt the modulation format or the coding, and thus we transit to the new state that we call the FAC adapt. And if the bit error rate returns below to the threshold, we can reuse the less redundant FAC, and we return back to the steady state condition. So this is one of the use cases. Is the use case that we thought for this draft, and that's it.
Thanks. It seems like you've created something, or you're defining something that could be very generally useful, but you've done so in a very, very, very specific use case. Is your intent to be that specific, or are you looking to build something that could be more general purpose, event, condition?
Yeah, we started from this use case because I actually work on optical networks. So we started from that, but finally, yeah, I agree with you. It's something that is more generic. So yeah, this is just one use case. We can think about some other use cases, because finally the model is generic. And so if someone has some idea for other use cases, for us is welcome.
Daniele Ceccarelli, C-Camp co-chair. I find this work really interesting. I have a comment along the lines of yours, in the sense that this work starts as an optical work, but it's just one of the many use cases, one of the applicabilities. What I would really like to see is this work to be done in a general manner. I believe the ops area is the right place, maybe NetMod, but any working group in the ops area, and then see technology-specific extensions, possibly in C-Camp or in other working groups of the routing area. This is my suggestion.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So this is Michael Schroff. I have some doubts on the specific use case, but we don't have to discuss this here. So I'm wondering, have you looked at the SUPA working group?
We submitted, we made a cross working group submission, so we included also.
Yeah, sure, but they have a Yang module, and I'm wondering whether all what you do here just can be done with the SUPA model.
Well, one of my colleagues discussed with Daniel King from SUPA, and as far as I know, the models that they are working in that working group do not include finished state machine.
That might be true, but for the other part, I think 100% what you could do here could be done by SUPA.
Okay.
And for the finished state machine, I think
in
we
general,
have to argue whether you actually need that in the Yang module.
Okay. In general, consider that, well, I'm not in IETF. It's my first time. So what we want to, we would like to highlight is the possibility and the importance of using a finite state machine to increase the level of programmability. Then if there is a more suitable syntax within Yang, it's okay for us. We can, and your comment is welcome to. We can discuss with people from SUPA.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, it's just a quick comment, and what you propose very interesting is seems to me is exactly one way to implement DMP, because each DNet probe is essentially just a finite state machine that's used to user to define how you can pre-process the data and collect data. So I think it's a very relevant. If you can extend this work to more than the optical network and to the general data plane processing, would be very relevant.
Thank you very much.
For the minutes, could you identify yourself?
This is Hao Yusong from Huawei. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Right. We are really out of time. Thank you for bringing this work in. Please bring this to the mailing list. And from what I know, somebody from your extended group will also try to present this at the routing working group on Friday. Or not, maybe I'm mistaken. So please bring this to the mailing list and initiate a discussion. And I2RS, SUPA, and then technology-specific groups certainly need to be...
I already sent the draft to the mailing list. OPS AWG.
The draft, yes, but please initiate a discussion.
Okay.
Right. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming. With this meeting is over, and there are cookies and other good things outside. Yeah, so we can discuss right now. We need to clean up this and prepare for the other group, so just give us a few moments and then we can see. Oh. So the show is over.
What happens with the blue
With these, let's go and then bring those to... So basically, you need to bring them to a registration desk, and there is either Stephanie or somebody from the secretariat who collects all of them. So we can go there together and see. And there's a box of them, and they collect it.
Okay.